Welcome to Ask Me How I Know, multifamily real estate investing stories of struggle to success, where each week unscripted interviews with guests bring a fresh perspective to problem solving in the multifamily niche, as well as feed your mindset. Success stories are great, but everyone knows the important part of the story, the part between the struggles of starting and arriving, and it often gets left out. Ask Me How I Know is like the back house of a restaurant. Pass through the prim and proper front of the house and join us in the harmonious chaos of the back of the house where honest, unscripted conversations take place and transformation happens. In life and investing, there are no shortages of wild scenarios, so no matter where you are in your investment journey, this podcast is for you. There is no pomp and fanfare here, just endless opportunity to build your investing and mindset playbooks. This is your retreat to breathe, build, and laugh. Welcome to Ask Me How I Know. I'm Julie Holly, and I'm happy you're here.
All right. Hey, welcome back to Ask Me How I Know. Wow. Damion and I scheduled this, a couple weeks ago-ish, and I had reached out to ask if Damion would speak about, hey, let's prepare a game plan for, when the economy goes sideways. And then all of a sudden, poof, it really was like 2008, just poof, everything vaporized. So this podcast is super timely on developing your game plan and creating some strategy. And so you're going to notice toilet paper in the background. So highest bidder, I take gold, doesn't have to be the pretty kind. And Damion, you have in the background behind you, I noticed last night's webinar.
Last night, yeah, all the doingness from last night is sitting there right behind me, supporting what we're going to talk about today. I think that's a kind of interesting energy to have with us.
I think so too. So I really like both of our backgrounds right now, but I don't do a lot of long introductions. So I always say, y'all remember to look down in the show notes and click away, because I'll put a bunch of hyperlinks in, because you need to be connected with Damion Lupo. You need to be following him. One, you need to be following him because he knows what he's talking about. And number two, he's going to lift you up. So last night's webinar was so fantastic. He did this whole webinar on creating a tribe so that you can overcome fear. But even 2 days before that, you were doing a whole webinar on buying gold. And
yeah, really, it's finding ways to serve with what we actually have experience and know-how with. What I find is a lot of times people just regurgitate stuff, and what we need wisdom from people's experiences. And so I'm teaching from my experience, and I think we all have experiences that we can share. And now more than ever is the time that we need that. We need people to be sharing. It's kind of like if you think about however thousands of years ago when people are sitting around campfires and we connected over campfires and stories, and it was our experiences. And that's kind of what we need again to bring people together, because we've become so isolated and so disconnected. And now we're afraid. And I think in large part, a lot of the fear is because we're not sitting around campfires connecting and sharing stories and, talking about things. Hey, 30, 40, 50 years ago, we went through this, or grandma did this, and realizing that we're going to get through it. People are just watching the freaking news and they're like, oh my gosh, the sky is falling. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff falling out of the sky. Let's be realistic. It's happening. There's a lot of bad stuff. And at the same time, we can ask, well, how is this going to be good? And what are the good things that are going to come of this? And if we look at all of those, not just one, because you can be totally optimistic and not realize there's a train coming down and running over you, or you can be super pessimistic and then you're just a negative person and you're really kind of wasting your experience of being a human. So we need all these different things. I mentioned a book last night called Thinking for a Change by John Maxwell. And one of the most powerful books ever that I read, because it helped me to understand there's different types of thinking. We need to be able to tap into those different thinkings and not just focus on one or be obsessed because we happen to be well versed or practiced in optimism or pessimism or whatever. We need well-rounded thinking so that we can have objective reality around the world and our own lives.
That's so true. I just finished, a couple weeks ago, I finished his How Successful People Think, and that was really great. And it's weird. I went to the library to pick up some books just in case everything shut down. but my little small town library didn't have any Maxwell in it. I'm like, they're like, we can order it in. I'm like, yeah, you guys are closing today. That won't work. It won't work. I love what you're saying about, like we did used to have these stories that were passed down from generation to generation. And I noticed there's actually a lot of good stories coming, like being unearthed right now. And I'm noticing like, wow, we have some friends and their faith that they have produces like this little publication that's distributed amongst them. And it's called The Vindicator. And it's from like German Baptists, I think. And anyway, like they have this in this publication, somebody posted, it said 1918. And basically it was talking about this huge sickness that went through, America, and how it described everything that's going on right now. And it's like, I think, even as we tell those stories, we can free ourselves from some of those fears that people have. And it's like, no, history's been here before. This isn't new. This isn't the American government trying to do something, or maybe it is. I don't know. But I live in far north Idaho, so I have to say, I don't know.
I think there's a lot of people that we're all trying to figure it out. I think in large part, governments and politicians are trying to figure it out. And I get that there are some people that are very bad, that are very powerful, that have alternative agendas. And I get all that. And I think that that's realistic because power begets power, and absolute power turns into a nightmare. And so there's a consolidation. In fact, Rahm Emanuel said this, the former chief of staff for President Obama and the mayor of Chicago. He said, never let a good crisis go unused, something to that effect. And so there are people that would say, okay, well, let's consolidate power. And I understand that. And okay, so what are we going to do about that? Are we going to just say, okay, I'm going to be mad? Well, right now, getting mad isn't going to really do much for you unless it gets you off your butt and maybe you start changing some things, which is the whole point. Maybe there's something that we can do. Like one of the things that's really fascinating right now about this whole thing, Americans are more susceptible to viruses and things because we're immunocompromised, because our immune systems have been beat up based on things like our diet, our sedentary lifestyles. And in China and Italy, you have a lot of people that are coming down with it. There's heavy smoking there. These things compromise the immune system. So what's the point of saying all that? We're in a space where there's an opportunity to actually get healthier by making different choices, because it's like, well, maybe our choices are going to kill us a lot faster than we thought the Twinkie would do damage. Now it's actually going to do more damage very quickly because we can't fend off these bugs. So perhaps we'll start making better choices. We'll get up and stop looking at our screens. We'll start going outside and exercising and just start thinking about what we put in our mouths. I mean, doesn't really matter if you're investing, if you're dying. If you're making money, but your health sucks, it's really kind of pointless. Like, why would we do that? So this is giving us an opportunity to think about things. We're also sitting in our homes, looking in the mirror going, okay, now what? Because we're so used to responding and being stimulated. And right now, our own brains, our minds, our thoughts, that's what's stimulating us or making us a little crazy. So it's a really interesting opportunity that would have never happened if what is happening now hadn't happened. I really don't think that anything less than this would give us this great of an opportunity.
I agree with that. I mean, I find even my own personal practices, I'm very ambitious and, probably going full speed. And this has really caused me to do some very good slowing down. And, just by nature of personal, just thinking on my own, but I love your Decades by Design, that. But this program that you've rolled out this year, just to take control of your time and to evaluate where you want to be in 10 years and actually have a plan to get there, that has had me slowing down. But this has really just put a really nice buffer to even reflect more upon, okay, we're going to be here in 10 years. So what do I want that to look like? And what would you say? How would you suggest for all of the investors and everyone right now to maintain their focus? Like, what are some strategies you would do to say 10 years is going to happen? So right now.
One of the things that I noticed, and this is happening. So to take a step back, when I was in Belgium a few years ago, there's a museum about wars, and every time there's a war, you can see whoever's going to be going into war makes the other side really like. There's a cartoon villain that we make people really really ugly and dangerous and spooky looking, and we always look for a villain. And it's fascinating and sad, but it's a common playbook. We're seeing the same thing with what Trump has done recently, where he said it's the Chinese virus. So now we're demagoguing the Chinese, and it's a coronavirus. And like we're not actually being rational, regardless of what anybody thinks of Trump. It's not an appropriate thing to say. And I think we can say that this is a reflection and preparation virus. There's a lot of different ways to frame whatever we're looking at. This virus is literally giving us an opportunity to reflect, like you said, with the reflection that you're doing, and prepare. It gives us the time. I mean, when we say, oh my gosh, I'm out of work, I've got a month off, well, you know what? You're going to get past it. People are going to come together. The thing is, though, you wouldn't have had a month to actually spend, maybe it's going to be 2 or 6 months. It also gives you time not only to prepare, but to start tapping into your potential. I think a lot of us are just going through motions. And instead of just going through motions, this gives us an opportunity to actually thrive and create, being what Seth Godin says is our inner artist, and really tapping into that. I mean, there's an opportunity here that I really don't think could have happened without a crisis at this level, to bring people together. We've become so fractured and so mad at other people, and we're divided. And really, this is in large part bringing us together. And that's the mission of everyone out there that's listening and watching, is to think of ways that you can lead in bringing people together and creating and tapping into potential. And yes, people are going to they're going to get hurt. They're going to be sick. Some people are going to die. Like, I get all that. That's part of the realistic thinking about a situation like this. And at the same time, most of the population is going to be around a year from now and 10 years from now. And what are we going to do with that? Well, knowing that we're probably going to be there, I mean, statistically, we're going to be there. Who are you going to be then? And you can backfill it in. If you say, this is what I'm going to be, great. You've got 10 years. Let's start planting some seeds right now. You got some free time. So this is a great time to plant some seeds, right?
All right. How would you speak to the person that says, so we'll speak to a couple like investors at different points. Okay. We'll start with the new one. The new investor that's like I'm the newer investor. So, oh my gosh, literally, Damion, seriously, I was scheduled to take a year off, a sabbatical basically, from my teaching job, to fully immerse myself and to just charge forward and to take care of my son's needs and things like that. Now I'm kind of like, what do I do? That's a personal thing, but how do we plant the seeds? And how does that younger investor maintain the course? Is there a change in strategy that they should be using?
Yeah, here's the thing. I mentioned this during the event, and I was talking a lot about personal development, because I think it was Jim Rohn that talked about this, that your level, or who knows, somebody very wise and probably long since passed, said effectively that your financial wealth will never exceed your level of personal development. And so anybody at any stage, if you say, oh my gosh, the opportunities are going to come, which they will. I mean, the amount of wealth that was transferred with the Great Depression is epic, and it's going to be similar, because we're going into a global depression, and we don't really know what that means, other than it's a really bad recession. Okay, when that happens, it washes out a lot of the puff, all the bubbled out assets and things. It will wash that stuff out. On the other side of that, there's opportunity. The problem is, and I had this happen in 2009 and 10, my level of personal development wasn't at the level where I was able to actually embrace the opportunities. So even though they were there, I wasn't available. And if you think about, well, what do I need to learn? You need to develop. It's not about what tool you learn, because even if you have all the tools in the world, I mean, they're all on freaking YouTube and Google. Like, here's the strategy. Here's how you look at an M&A deal for $1 billion. Okay, great. But if you haven't developed yourself, you can't actually do it. Like, there's no way to do it. There's a comfort level you get when you have a $10,000 check, or 25 or a 50 or 100,000 or $1 million check, or these different things. If I just handed most people a $10 million check, they would freak out and they'd get paralyzed. So it's about growing to the place where you can actually embrace these things and run with them. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. You're just going to go, oh, yeah, I remember the crash and the opportunities, and I just watched them. It's not about knowing the tools. It's about knowing you and opening you up. That's why we talked about personal development so much, because that's the key to being ready for the opportunity. And if you've got a year, like in your case, which a lot of people are going to have a year, they're going to have a year of low or no income or employment. Like they're going to huge opportunity to massively expand. Most of the population won't. And so there's really no competition in that space because people go, what's the next tip or tool? It's not the tip or tool. That's like secondary. How many times have we gone to seminars or different things where there's a bunch of tapes, CDs, whatever, programs, right? Okay, tapes, this is 20 years ago. Where you can buy programs and we get them, and you know what happens? They sit in the wrap, like they never get opened because people aren't ready to embrace that and to shift, because that stuff will shift you. And if you're not ready, you'll literally keep it sealed and you'll go, cool, I've got wisdom. No, you've just got less money in your bank account and some saran wrapped plastic crap.
Oh gosh, that's so true. I think, what is it, less than 1% of people at seminars and everything actually take action and do whatever it is that's required, because it's work. It's work to.
It's a 4-letter word, Julie.
Oh, I know. It's not. I didn't say luck. Okay, you can't say. Didn't say the L word. Jeez.
Hey, W is a very dangerous word because most of us are like, wait, what? I have to do something? Oh my goodness.
Actually, it's going to require, like, it's interesting how I really like doing physical work, like, like exercise and everything, because it translates over into my mentality for how I handle other work. Like if I can go out and ride a century on my road bike, or if I can go to the top of a mountain on my mountain bike or whatever it is, it's like, and endure that. I'm like, I can endure anything. Like work like that, oh, I can do that. So like that direct correlation between those things is so powerful. And it's like that concept of what is work and what can I endure and what can I do, so important.
There's a thing that Aristotle said that I used to follow, and then now I think it was crazy. And he said the purpose of life is happiness. And I was like, yeah, it was my core mantra for my life. Okay, it's about happiness. And then I had a great interview with a guy named Fred D. DeMonico, who does a lot of work with chiropractors, and he said that is not the purpose of life. And I went, wow, you're telling me you know better than Aristotle? And he said, look, there's times where you're going through life where there's struggle. You're not necessarily happy with the struggle. It's part of the process. The purpose of life is growing until you're dead. Like it's like, it's not just where it's bliss and glee. And I think a lot of us have been convinced, or we bought into the idea that we're entitled to something and it's always supposed to be good. What are we teaching kids these days? Everybody wins. It's always good. Like, give me a break. We're soft. And for the large part, there's a generation of kids that are basically wusses because they were told they never learned how to lose. They never learned how to get punched in the face and fall down and bleed. Those are core things that are required for life. You don't go out in the real world and everything works. In fact, most of the time it doesn't work, and then you adapt. But when you're always given a trophy for showing up, that's an idiotic system that makes people very weak. So this is a great opportunity for people to go, oh, wait, I don't get a corner office with my little goofy college degree and a 6-figure salary for doing nothing except showing up and then hanging out on Facebook feed. The world's not like that. So I think this is a really good opportunity for people to actually see reality, not just fiction.
Oh my gosh, amen, preach it. I actually have taught students in the classroom as a classroom teacher. I've taught them every year, like, the learning is in the struggle. Done. Like, and they're little, they're like 8 years old. I'm like, if you're not struggling, you're not pushing yourself. And we talk about that physical representation of, like, if I go to the gym and I'll pick something up and I'll be like, oh yeah, if I just try to, like, because all my students, we do exercises in class and they all know I work out, right? So because I want them to understand healthy lifestyles. So I'll pick up my phone, like, if I'm trying to, like, bench press something this, am I going to get muscles? Like, it's like, if you're not pushing yourself and you're learning, if it's not hard, you're not learning. And it's the same, like, it's exactly what you're saying. It's like, people today, right now, I totally believe that everybody has this, like, interpersonal gift. And it's like, I feel like we're all walking around with this shell over us, and it needs to come out, but we got to break these shells off of ourselves. And I think that a lot of people can do this. through this whole recession, through what's coming down, it's like, I think we're going to see some really incredible people rise up because they're just going to finally like break through.
We are. We're going to see opportunities. We're going to see people that didn't really show up until now, and it's like basically putting a pressure. You put pressure on a system, on any system, biological system, and something pops out. It's called, there's a thing called Prigogne's theory of dissipative structure and perturbation, where as things vibrate, there's pressure put on them. They eventually pop out at a different level, and once they pop out, it's kind of like if you put pressure on a person and it's a struggle, and they keep going. Eventually, they break through it, and now they can't ever go back. It's like why people, they're making 50,000, 50,000, 50,000, 60, 70, and then all of a sudden something pops and they're making 400, 500,000 or whatever in terms of financial.
Right.
At that point, they're always going to make that pretty much. I mean, we're talking about the middle of the bell curve. Like mostly this is what happens because that's their reality. And there's a certain energy about who you are. There are certain people that always make $10 million a year. They just understand how to do that because that's who they are. And that's the benefit of something, the struggle. It puts pressure on us. When we learn a new language, we pop into it. Oh, we finally get it. And that's awesome. It's not bad when it hurts. It's bad when you don't feel anything and you're just going through emotions. That's bad. If anything's bad, so when we go, oh my gosh, this is so hard, and I can't go out, and I can't go to the gym, and I can't go to my restaurant, and all these bitching and moanings that we have, given whatever is going on, whether it's Corona or something else, that's exactly what you want. You want to be feeling the pressure. If it's all just bliss, you're doing the wrong thing.
Oh man, seriously. Wow. I'm just digesting that. You just said, like, basically you gave like this very sophisticated answer for what I call my Care Bear concept of like, do you remember Care Bears, how they had their like little thing that would shoot from their tummies? I'm like, everybody has a Care Bear inside of them. It just wants to come out.
It does. It's that, and it's a great way to look at it. I mean, we have that inner heart, that love that wants to come out, and a lot of us have lost the opening because we've closed it down because we think we have to put all of our energy somewhere else, that all the money and the success and keeping up with whoever's feed we happen to be running into on Facebook is the most important thing, and then it's never enough. So we lose the actual heart connection with people. We lose the love. The ability to love gets buried, and it's really sad. You see people just, it's always a fight for the next dollar. It's like, wait, what is the point? What are you doing?
And what is the purpose? This is a great opportunity for people to really come up with, what is your purpose? What is your purpose for here in life right now? We were doing, Steve and I were doing a coaching call this last week, and we were redefining our purpose, and like, we're not redefining it, but just like, you always have to have your purpose at front and center. Like, why am I here? What am I supposed to be doing? And if you lose sight of that, you're going to get derailed. I think a lot of people are going to get derailed through this. And honestly, I've noticed like the last couple of days, I gave myself some space. It's been hard, packing up a classroom with kids, like seriously, like putting kids' stuff in black trash bags. Like, dude, they're empty class. Like, there's a lot of this that's like really emotionally hard, and like taking that space to just acknowledge, like, hey, this is hard. That's okay. Skip a beat, recalibrate, and then get that purpose back. But I think there are a lot of people that aren't going to recalibrate, that are just going to stay down below. And it's like, okay, grieve, mourn. It's hard. Acknowledge it, feel it, and then get the game on. I'm like, that game.
It's choice. It comes down to it. Being 20, 25, 30 minutes into this, there's probably a reason you're still here. And it's because you're not wanting to sit down and just be down. It's even when Mike Tyson punched people in the mouth and they had a great plan and they were laying on the ground, they eventually got up. They might have got up in a fog, dizzy, in the hospital, but they still got up. And that's pretty extreme. I mean, nobody right now is having Mike Tyson punch you in the head. Like, that's, even if you get coronavirus, trust me, it would be worse to have Mike Tyson punch you in the face right now. So, you're going to, in all likelihood, you're going to get up. And I think we just have to remember that. that it is a choice. One of the best books I ever read was a little teeny thing called the Greatest Power. And the greatest power is the power to choose, choosing what you do, how you respond, how you interpret things, and really taking responsibility for everything. And the most extreme, I say this a lot, but it's really about responsibility. It's not about blaming or justifying or pointing a finger or whatever. It's about taking responsibility. And people will say, well, I didn't cause a hurricane. I didn't have that person attack me. And then the response is, you get to choose how you respond to it. You get to choose what happens between your ears. And if you're going to blame somebody and be mad the rest of your life, you're stuck and you just gave your power away. So you get to choose where your power goes. It's Viktor Frankl's book, A Man's Search for Meaning, also very, very, very valuable to think about. And that's from the perspective of being in a concentration camp. I mean, if you can get through that and understand that thinking is where it's at, I think it really allows us to get through anything. You just have to have some perspective sometimes, because we don't really have much perspective anymore. Like most people have, like their perspective is kind of artificial. So when you have a perspective on the other side, you go, wow, and it really shifts you into gratitude as well. Like, wow, my life is pretty damn good.
Oh, man.
Like imagine most people that are listening or watching you're in America, most likely. Think about what this would be like if you were in Somalia or Niger or someplace that was really dangerous and you maybe didn't even have running water. Like think about, there is a perspective that we can have if we're willing to be a little less selfish around how the whole world is out to get me. And I think a lot of us have just been trained. This is what it is. Everything is somebody else's fault. And I need to yell and bitch and moan about it. Well, that's not going to help anything. Perspective does. And gratitude really does.
Gratitude is so powerful at shifting a negative attitude. You know, I've even been thinking about just how this can weed out just so much of the negative thinking and the clashing there's just been so much infighting that's taken place that it's like now, and we were so spoiled for so long that, now that it's like, we can't talk about a bunch of these kind of artificial problems that we've created because we've had it so easy. And so now we can actually potentially like do some really great legwork for creating a stronger country. Like this could actually make us not just, for nationalism, but this could make for something much stronger. And that's exciting. Like we get rid of all these petty little arguments. The squabbling and everything. It's so
it does. It gives us an opportunity to come together both as a country, but also as a planet too, just as humans there and our communities. Less angst and animosity towards other people, and maybe more tolerance, more openness to different, instead of saying everything has to be my way or our way, I need all the power or the control. Perhaps we actually start evolving as human beings instead of doing what we traditionally do, which is go out and find ways to kill each other. Like our inner nature of fighting and conquering at some point has to really stop. Like we're not going to survive as a species if we continue going down the primal route of conquering others and trying to consume everything and everybody. Like that's not going to work. It's not sustainable. I don't think it's a big mystery why some of these people like Elon and Jeff Bezos are working on space travel and going to Mars, because they understand what humans are destined to do. If we don't think through this better, we are destined to eradicate ourselves. I mean, it's crazy that we have to do better than our primal instincts. Our primal instincts are not very healthy, because we're like warmongers and things, and we need to really get past that. And so maybe this will help everybody see that, and we can start pushing the leadership that makes those decisions to make better decisions so that we actually survive as the species.
Oh, seriously. It's interesting. We studied history with like our own children from ancient times, to modern history. We just you weave it in throughout life, and it's so interesting, but it's like, you just follow who wants power, who wants money, who has a big ego, and they're the ones that are going out trying to conquer, it's like, can't we just be? Like, I'm pretty sure the Native Americans were quite happy and they just wanted to be, on their land. It's kind of
this comes back to ego. I mean, it's really what you said. I mean, this is somebody's ego that thinks that they know better, and that's at a national and international level. It's also at a personal level, just trying to inflict your will on people. I think there's value in saying, okay, people think differently. Doesn't mean you're not an influencer. I think that's incredibly valuable, but to just dominate somebody. And I get it. There are times when that's important. Like if your child is in the road, you're going to dominate them when a car is coming. You're not going to say, "Let me talk to you about the car coming at you that's going to run you over in 3 seconds." You just dominate them. That's not most of how life works, though. It's not about dominating people because you crush them. So it's really about thinking, how can we have a conversation and a discussion and seek to understand before you're seeking to be understood. That really helps the conversation. A lot of times people are trying to impose their will by making their point. And oftentimes that doesn't get anywhere because nobody's listening. They're just thinking about their point. And so it's like negotiating in an investment deal. You have to understand where somebody's coming from. And the deeper you get into understanding them, the more likely you can find a place that works for everybody. But if you're just saying, okay, well, here's my price and there's their price, well, how do you know? Why does it matter? Why does that price matter to them? Maybe there's terms. Maybe there's something else you can do. Maybe they're hungry and a can of beans will actually make the deal happen. Like who knows? But until you understand, you're never going to know. And your ego will blow up more deals and more relationships than anything. So you kind of have to check the ego. It's one of the things I learned in 2008 when I lost 20 million bucks. My ego was driving that ship right off a cliff. And that really had to change. So the ego's got a powerful place, and it also has a way of destroying things if we don't actually acknowledge that it's driving the ship sometimes.
Yeah, you can harness the ego for good or for or for destruction, really. That's interesting. Thanks for bringing up 2008, because as we're talking about ego, I'm like, well, I think that lends itself to your story. Like, what would you say to some of the investors that are feeling investing, a lot of people, especially in multifamily, have found a lot of success over the last, 7-10 years, and they're feeling like, well, I've got all these units, I've got this and that, and their egos are really big, and we know it. And so, what would you say to some of those people?
I would say buckle up because you're going to go through a process that was in some ways very similar to what I went through, where I thought I was the smartest man on the planet and I was invincible. I was 10 feet tall, bulletproof. And I found out how mortal I was. And when we say, well, this is a common thing in multifamily, I've got 100 units, or I've got 1,000, or I've got 5,000. Okay, well, the more units you have doesn't really mean anything. It doesn't mean you're more successful or you're more bulletproof. It means you're potentially more complex, and systems that are more complex are easier to disrupt than a simple one because there's a lot more moving parts. And the inevitable happens for a lot of people when their stuff blows up and it melts down and and you start losing property, because this is going to happen. I mean, let's just be realistic. It's going to happen for a lot of people. Understand that you are not your property. And when that happens, you can say, okay, well, I'm learning from this one, and you can own it. You can be responsible, and you can go back to investors and you can say, hey, here's what happened. And some people will understand and some people will not. I've had people that have reached out a decade after the meltdown and said, hey, I'm just wondering if you can still pay me back, or I would love that money. And I'm thinking, okay, some people never take responsibility for their investing. I always find it ironic that investors will ask for their money back when something doesn't work, or they'll say, hey, I need, you screwed this up, I want my money. And those same people would never come to you and say, hey, great deal, you know what, we made a ton of money, let me give you half of it. Like that's so that there's going to be a lot of crazy people that you're going to deal with, and you might be one of them. You might go into a crazy place. Just hopefully, I didn't have anybody say this in 2008. I had no idea. I felt very isolated and I thought the end of the world was happening. The reality is you're going to move past it. And the question is, how soon do you take the medicine? Are you going to rip off a Band-Aid, or are you going to just slowly tear all the hairs off of your body? And that's, there's a choice. Just understand it's going to be a bloody mess. And in bloody messes, there's unbelievable opportunity. So if you're in the middle of that stuff and you're doing what I did, which is pretend it's not happening, like that's a really great strategy for missing all the opportunities and not actually learning anything. So what we choose to do in this is going to define us for the next decade. Truly, if you've got a bunch of investments, you're about to have some interesting choices that will truly tell us who you are. So who do you want to be going through hell? Are you going to be somebody that says, all right, you know what? It's hot. It hurts. I'm going to go through it. Or are you going to sit there and just whine, and hide? I mean, I get it. Tendency is I don't want the pain, but trust me, pain quickly is better than pain that just lasts, because it kills your spirit.
Oh gosh. Yeah. Boy, howdy it does. We have an expression, my daughter and I will throw my daughter and I under the bus, and she's like all of 9 years old. But, we're prone to whining. So we have an expression that we say to each other, don't waste over whining. Like, it's a waste. It's not proactive. It's not productive. It doesn't accomplish anything. It demoralizes everyone around you. It's not worth it at all. So I would encourage everybody, don't waste over whining, accept what it is, move on.
Yeah, and along those lines, accept what things are in reality. So one of the things I've noticed is that people are pretending everything's going to be okay. There was a recent event that was just canceled, or it was a live event that went to virtual. And the sad part is every other event this year that I'm involved with has been canceled or indefinitely postponed. And then I watch this one event, and everybody's waiting. We're all kind of sitting here, and I thought, okay, you're not acknowledging reality. Even a week ago, and which was about the 13th of March, there was this thought, well, maybe this will just blow over. And I'm thinking, are you people that are running this that naive? And you're not naive, and you're not stupid. What you're doing is you're putting money before people and reality. And I was really disappointed in that decision-making process. The point of saying that is that you're going to be faced with things like sinking ships. And when you're on a sinking ship, or you have a sinking ship, the question is, how much do you keep putting into that sinking ship before you acknowledge what it is? A lot of times we do it until we have nothing left to put in. And that can be a really dumb thing to do, because our ego is trying to pretend we didn't make a mistake, or that something's not working. Sometimes you didn't make a mistake. Sometimes it's just the damn economy. And you can say, okay, got it. I learned something new here. We have to be willing to acknowledge reality. And if that means that losses are happening, acknowledge them. I mean, it's just, there's probably millions of companies right now in the US and around the world that are closed, shutting down, that are going to go out of business, that are going to be gone. And out of the ashes, the phoenix will rise. There's going to be an opportunity to do something different. And I get it. It sucks. I remember my credit getting so low because of the meltdown. I couldn't even qualify for a toaster. Like, it was really bad. I didn't know you could have a 420 credit score. Like, I was like, what? Don't I get credit for spelling my name right? No, like, it's really bad. So just understand, it's not going to kill you. Just when these things happen, what will kill you and what will destroy your reputation is not acknowledging it. You're going to have people that are mad at you. I mean, that is inevitable. It doesn't mean that you're worth less as a human. And I think that that's one of the hardest things. We want everybody to like us. We want our investors to be happy. We want to pay people based on what we expected to pay them. And that's not going to happen for a lot of people. And just understand, that's okay. It happens. Sometimes you can't fix it. Sometimes you just have to acknowledge it and be with it, and then move past it. It's not your entire life. I got really stuck in that for a long time. And there will be people that will try to make it your entire life, and they will never let go. At some point you have to acknowledge that it's their issue. It's not your issue. That investing it has risk. Investing doesn't go smoothly and perfectly like an ounce of gold in your hand. Nothing happens with an ounce of gold in your hand. There is no risk. It's just sitting there. But real estate is not just sitting there. A million things can happen. And to say, well, hey, I'm supposed to get 19 or 20 or 23% every year, that's how it's supposed to be, is delusional.
Right. Well, it's funny, but can't we be like, stockbrokers and everybody, and just be like, oh, sorry, it just happened. Sorry. It's like the weatherman, like, I was wrong about the weather. Sorry. Like, you speak such truth, though. You always do. But when you're talking about, trying to hold on to a sinking ship, I was thinking about your recent experience down in Colorado Springs. And I have been there's some people that I hear of these, different circumstances that come up. And I'm so impressed because, excuse me, it just takes such, in my estimation, it takes a lot of courage to be able to acknowledge, to not be in denial, and to acknowledge, you know what, this just isn't working out very well. And I I'm going to part ways with this. And do you want to speak to that a little bit with the Colorado Springs? And
Yeah, I see this a lot with people that get involved in deals. We find a deal. It's like seeing some attractive person across the room and deciding, okay, that's the person that I'm going to be with the rest of my life because you looked at them and they looked attractive, and then you just start going down the road and you disconnect from all of the warts and all of the problems. And it doesn't mean things don't have issues, but when somebody is literally like stabbing you in the neck every day, maybe you shouldn't be with that person the rest of your life. Maybe that's a bad relationship. And investments are the same thing. Sometimes they start stabbing you, or sometimes they start biting you. And when you actually understand what you're dealing with and who you're dealing with, so in the event, the investment you're talking about, there was a development and it looked really good. And my team and I spent almost 2 years working on this thing. And that's a lot of time and a lot of money. We're talking a couple $100,000. And right before we were going to send out the private placement memorandum, the PPM, to offer it to investors to invest, I literally killed it. I killed it 24 hours before this thing was going out. And it was because I lost trust with the developer. And I didn't know that we were there until we were there. It wasn't something where I would have known that until we got right to that edge. And you can think, oh, my deal is great. You may not know until you actually spend money. And once you spend money, you can't fall in love just because you spent money. I did that with an apartment deal 15 years ago. I fell in love as soon as my money went hard. I had earnest money, about $40,000, and it went hard and I got stupid. And it was because I didn't want to lose my money. So I played so hard not to lose that not only did I not win, I lost everything. And I got sued by the lender. So
insult injury.
It did. It was like, wait a second, I lost the property and you're suing me? And then I got to spend 2 years in court. And I beat him because he was a fraudster and a scammer and trying to double dip because he'd already sold the property a month later. I mean, he literally sued me after he had sold the property, trying to get a deficiency. And what that means is I owed him, I had personally signed on this for about $1.2 million. The property sold at foreclosure for 300 back to him. And so he sued me for $900,000. That's called a deficiency.
Right.
And you can't have a deficiency if you sell it for more than what the person owes you. He sold it for $1.4 million, $1.5 million, and closed 30 days later. So he didn't have a deficiency, but it didn't matter. He was going to try to get it both ways, and he figured he would bury me. That will happen to some people because a lot of times the deals, if they're small, there's going to be personal guarantees, and lenders are going to come after people. So if and when that happens, just understand there's always bankruptcy. I mean, just like this is hard truth. Like that sometimes is necessary because if you melt down and you owe millions of dollars, what are you going to do? Serve lattes and pay back $5 or $10 million? There's a certain reality around that. If you lost a couple 100,000, could you pay it back? Yes, absolutely. $500,000? Yes. But when you're talking about millions, sometimes you just have to acknowledge, hey, this is too big for me to recover from. I literally can't recover. It's like it's carrying around a weight. Specific example, I had an investor who invested, and I remember the conversation when things went bad, and her comment was, I don't care what you got to do. You need to go get a job slinging drinks, do something and start making payments to me because I'm in a place where I'm retired and I'm counting on this money. And I'm thinking, if you wanted to count on your money as if it was never going to change, you probably should have bought an annuity from an insurance company and made 3%. If you wanted a guarantee that nothing would happen, it's about as close as you're going to get. But it's sure as hell not going to be 17% on deals. Those have risk. And it was crazy. I said, so am I supposed to work 700 hours a day? Because that's basically what it would have taken to pay all of the things that collapsed at once. And so people are not in reality. They're just running scared. So to the investors that are out there, when you're thinking, okay, do I do the deal? Do the deal if it makes sense. And if and when a deal goes bad, acknowledge it and say, here's what it is. And if people get mad at you, you know what? You're going to have to thicken your skin up because this is not all just easy and fun. And hey, look at all my doors. I got 500 doors. I'm so good. Okay, great. You know what? And I just shake my head when I see certain people on stage saying, I've never lost money. I'm like, you're a moron. I would never invest with you. I've got 8,000 doors. I've never lost money. You know what? I bet that person that I'm talking about right now is about to lose a whole bunch of money because his ego is driving a ship that he can't write the check for. I mean, that is going to happen. So this is a great time for us to step back and say, okay, what's true? That was the question I asked in 2010 and 11 for 2 years when everything was crashed and I was flat on the ground. I asked, okay, what is true? Ask that question right now. If you want homework, if you want to grow right now, ask the question, what is true? What is true about how I'm showing up? What is true about my investments? What is true about my money? What is true about my habits? What is true? And then when you say, okay, here's the answer, say, okay, what is really true? And just keep digging. It's not one time. It's not one day. I asked that question for 2 straight years, every week with another person. We just kept going, peeling the layers of the onion. It's unbelievable what you'll find if you're willing to actually dig into the truth.
Yeah, that really is. And I think I'd add also understanding like who you are, I mean, like who you were 10 years ago, as a person, who you are at this moment, and who you are becoming is being defined right now. And it's like, this is such a great opportunity to define who you are. Who do you want to become? I had a little come to Jesus moment with that last week where it's like, man, I'm not acting like who I want to be. And I'm looking at who I want to be down the road, not like who am I at this moment. And I'm like, dude, I gotta get some stuff in line because I'm reacting to some things right now and I'm not responding, and that's not who I want to become. So like really having an alignment of all of that. I have to say, I was out road biking yesterday for the first time. It was finally nice enough, but it just totally, my allergies, everything. So I'm like, and I have no water right here. I'm so sorry. But I mean, like having all of that aligned is so powerful and so important because like, I know you feel this way. It's like, who cares about all the money if you're a jerk? Like, who cares about all the whatever that you have if you have no value to give to the world and you're not offering anything? It's a waste. So I call it heartbeats, because my dad dropped dead at 69. So we're going on 5 years now. Totally healthy, dropped dead. And so I always just think about like, how are you using those heartbeats? Like every single day, like you don't know how many you get, man. Use those heartbeats so well. Who cares about 8,000 units if fill in a lot of inappropriate things if you're all these other things, like it's not worth it.
No, unfortunately, we've gotten, as a society, we've gotten addicted to looking at feeds on social media and comparing our life to those, and then trying to get to that. And you have no idea. I ask people a lot. One of the questions is when people are saying, "Well, I need this," and I go, "Why? What's going to happen?" Well, I need $25,000 a month, and I go, "Why?" And they say, "Well, then I'd be free." And I'm like, "Well, how do you know?" And when we did Decade by Design, it was really drilling down the numbers, because the numbers tell you a story. I had one gal that came up to me during an event and she said, "My goal is $1 billion." And I said, "Why?" She said, that way I can support my son because her son has special needs. And I said, "You need $1 billion to do that?" I said, "How much does it actually cost?" And it actually was like $200,000 a year. And I said, "Okay." So we did the math. And she was about 6 months away from being free, but she had this idea in her mind that $1 billion was required. And I go, "Have you been watching Grant Cardone or Ty Lopez? Like, what is your deal? What is going on here? You're do the math, and why you're going to give up part of your life to get these doors or this additional stuff." Now, if you love it, if it is your favorite thing and you get lost in the deal, okay, maybe that's what you should be doing. That's cool. To say that you need more doors to be happier or to be more safe or more secure, why? What is that doing to serve you, your family, your purpose, your contribution? And maybe it's because you feel compelled to provide housing. But if you're like, "Okay, well, I'm going to flip houses or I'm going to flip apartments. I'm going to go in, I'm going to have an apartment for 5 years. Then I'm going to go out and I've got 5,000 doors and I'm going to flip all those in 5 years." You're not contributing anything.
Yeah.
Like, give me a break. Like, what is that? You're giving up your life for something. So what is it that matters enough for you to trade your time that is limited by the number of heartbeats you have? It's really, really interesting to ask that question. And maybe you should stop doing what you're doing, or maybe you should do something different. I mean, who knows? But just asking the question, why? Why is that number important? What the heck is it going to do? Well, I want a private jet. Okay. So you're willing to give up the next 10 years of your life for that private jet. Cool. All right. So just understand the exchange. I mean, it is an exchange. We can do almost anything. And the reason that I focus on 10 years is because you can create anything in 10 years. I mean, if you want to start from zero and become a doctor, you can become a doctor in 10 years. If you want to have a private jet, you can have a private jet in 10 years. The question is, are you willing to pay the price? And the price tag principle is a big deal. You don't just get it when somebody says, oh, I wish I could, I want to be like you. And they're talking to Arnold Schwarzenegger or somebody that is playing in the NBA or whatever. And it's an easy response. No, you don't, because you didn't spend 10 hours a day at the gym for a decade. And so, no, you don't want this. So what you want is really very connected to the price you're willing to pay. Big question to ask. Are you willing to pay the price for the things that you want? And if you aren't, get them off your damn vision board.
Oh, amen. Protect that vision board.
And don't clutter it with nonsense. I mean, put what matters in there.
I actually pulled something out of I have like some pictures that I've printed off of things, and I'll go through them, and I actually did that. I'm like, this doesn't actually excite me. I mean, I like the idea of it, but I'm not willing to invest the heartbeats into making that a reality. And you have to be able.
Julie, one of the things that I love doing is renting the experience. So if it's like, let's say it is a private jet, or maybe it's a car, or maybe it's a house that you think you want a second home on the lake somewhere. I just did this in Telluride for a month. I thought, okay, I want to spend my winters here. And so I'm going to buy a house. And it was fascinating because I took my own medicine. I said, okay, what is the plan here? The plan is to rent the experience and see if I actually want the experience and I want to buy into it fully. And I was there. And after a month, I said, I am totally good with renting this experience every year for a week or two. I don't need to pay the price for a $5 million house to have 5 months a year. Renting the experience will help you get through a lot of the longings, which are really pretty detrimental when we're just longing for things and we think that that's going to make us happy. Go try them. It doesn't take that much. I mean, when you do it, you're like, oh, you get perspective because it won't just be in your head. Our heads will make us crazy because we come up with all sorts of stuff and then we actually live things. We go, like buying a Ferrari. Great idea to rent a Ferrari. Buying a Ferrari, not such a good idea most of the time. So just think about those things that are part of our dreams and our visions. What can we actually try? Can you borrow a dog? Make sure, because that is like it's half of having a kid. Like it's always needed. I was
going to say, how about kids?
Borrow a kid.
Take the nieces and nephews out. Take them for the weekend as a baby, and then as tween.
Just see how it is. See how it feels. See if you love it. And but I think a lot of times we get we get delusional about these things because somebody else has shown us the best sides of them and how cool they are, and we want that happiness. Truly, what we want is we want to be happy. I mean, and happiness comes from contributing. It comes from great connection with people. It comes from love. You don't really get a whole lot of happiness with just, I mean, maybe Jay Leno would disagree, but having a lot of really shiny cars and stuff, is that really going to make you as happy as, I think we need to challenge these beliefs and try some of them and just ask.
Yeah. How about having the big monstrous house and it's empty? Like, it makes no sense to me. Steve and I talk about this all the time. We're like, we don't want to have a huge house. You have to heat it. You have to cool it. You have to take care of like massive landscape, all this stuff. Like, you don't even use all this space. Like, man, let's just live a simple life. And like you're saying, like, you can go and stay in some big fancy place for a period of time. We very much agree with your renting the experience, because a lot of times that's all you need.
Well, that's what we're looking for. I mean, buying things in our society based on consumption is really about having things, but these things have us. And sometimes we have an experience that is in alignment with what we think these things are there for. But a lot of times, like having a big house, a friend of mine has a 15,000 square foot house, and his history was leaving every winter because it was in Chicago. He'd leave for about 6 months and he'd come back. And I remember him saying, every effing thing is broken in this damn house. And I'm just laughing. I go, yeah, it's a lot of house to have things break. And so I always say that there's a great way to approach life. Do it as simply as possible, as complex as necessary. And I think it's a great mantra for business: as simple as possible, as complex as necessary, because it'll really keep things where they're supposed to be. Not like I see sometimes people go into the unbelievable complexity and I'm going, why are you doing all that stuff? Does that actually benefit anybody? And it's just like, no, like 1 or 2 steps versus 27 steps. One person, like ask yourself, how complex does this need to be? Okay, less, good, do that. Simple as it can be.
Amen. Oh my goodness. I really enjoy talking with you. And so do you have any parting words? Any parting words for everybody?
Yeah, here's the thing that we're going to run into even more now than going forward, that mistakes are God's gift to you. They're wrapped up in pain, and without those, you don't grow. And growth is how we understand we're alive. And we go, ow, that hurt. That's proof of life. It's like a dream. Does it ever really hurt? No, you're in a dream. In reality, things hurt. You know you're growing if you're willing to take responsibility for them. So mistakes that you take responsibility for are unbelievable gifts and opportunities. Keep that in mind when things go wrong, when things happen because there's going to be a lot of pain, not just yours, but other people, and help them see the other side and the light here. And the gift is the learning. And that's true. Wealth is from the mistakes because we're learning by going through it. Wealth is not cash. It's not cash flow. It's truly you growing. And so right now, what can you do to grow? What can you take responsibility for that will help you grow? Find the mistakes, go do the mistakes and grow. And you're going to find your life is starting to unfold in a totally different way.
Oh man, preach it. And so for everybody listening or watching, please make sure that you are looking at the notes, because Damion has so many fantastic resources. You just make yourself so available through these different decades by design. And you're always coming out with these new webinars that are timely and helpful. And really, you offer so many practical ways for people to implement strategies that will make them grow as people, but also become better in the world that they're in. And so I love everything that you are doing. And there's even so much more. I mean, if you need to know about gold and how to invest in alternative, assets, I mean, go look up what Damion is doing, because I love it. You don't hoard information. You're not a hoarder. You're like a dispenser. Like, here you go. This works. This works. I learned the hard way. So thank you for letting us, thank you for sharing and not hoarding all of your knowledge and wisdom.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to share. One last thing that I'll say is information is like love. Sharing information doesn't mean that you don't have it. You still have it. And same thing with love. When you share it, it just expands it. And it's one of the things when I hear people saying, well, I don't want to give this stuff out. I have to charge people for. I'm like, well, you know what? People can take your stuff. They can rip it off. I get it. Here's the thing though, they can't steal you. And when you keep creating, which is what we're supposed to be doing, we're supposed to be creating as humans, you're just going to keep creating better and more. So in terms of more, that's a great more creation versus more hoarding. And I think that's a big shift that people can make. Don't worry about having all your stuff under your control. Be more generous, be more kind to people, and you'll find that the pie just keeps getting bigger.
Oh man. That's what I tell my little students. Be generous with kindness. So, we'll leave everybody on that note. Again, double check all the show notes wherever you're watching and go and follow Damion and what he's doing, because you will be blessed for it. I guarantee it, 3 million%. The ROI on following what Damion's doing and tracking with that, huge. All right. And
Thanks, Julie. I appreciate that.
Yes, everyone needs to go out there and find your freedom. It's one decision away.
Thanks so much for joining me for another episode of Ask Me How I Know. My guests are the most humble successes, so be sure to show them your appreciation by rating this episode 5 stars, which sounds silly, but let's be real. Ratings, likes, and shares, they take no time at all, but make all the difference in the world, if only to boost morale. Also, since I don't spend time on the how and why they got into investing, Be sure to check out the show notes to get to know more about today's guests, including other podcasts they've been on that has a more traditional format that will give other details about their investment journey. It'll also tell you things like the most influential person in their life and what they're reading right now, as well as how to connect with them. And please subscribe and rate Ask Me How I Know so it reaches other listeners like you. Until next time, go find your freedom.